Now in Israel, mainstream media are being accused of burying their heads in the sand over coverage of the biggest anti-government protest the country has seen in decades. Well, tens of thousands of people fed up with deteriorating living standards are staging demonstrations calling for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to stand down. RT's Paulus Leo reports from Tel Aviv, protesters' voices are simply going unheard by the rest of the world.
Tens of thousands on the streets of Israel, angry, fed up, and protesting for change. But is anyone listening?
When it comes to Israel, a lot of the foreign media want to see more of an action movie, and this hasn't been very violent. It hasn't been violent at all. It's been very positive.
Well into week 3, the largest demonstration in Israel in over a decade. And how did ABC, CBS, and NBC cover it? They didn't.
A young woman set up a tent,
while the editors of France 24, BBC and Sky coughed up just a few meager seconds.
Perhaps it's not even that interesting to their editors back in the studios. Okay, there's a protest. Well, what exactly is a protest? A social protest? Well, is it a revolution? It's not the same kind of story that they're used to, and it's not as big and dramatic as some of the bigger revolutions happening around the Middle East.
And Amir Mizrach isn't surprised by the worldwide lack of media interest. He's worked in the Israeli press for a decade, reporting for media both foreign and local.
There is a box that the international media has put Israel in, and that is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, also the Israeli-Lebanese and Syrian conflict. And anything that doesn't kind of fit into that is not the immediate type of news item, which is unfortunate.
That just makes Hannah Reyes and others angry. For 9 days she's been camping here, furious that she can't make ends meet as a university student.
It makes me upset that when Egypt decided to stand up and say we've had enough, and when in Lebanon they decided to say we've had enough, the media was all over there. I haven't seen anyone from CNN or from Fox News or any other, big news channel here, and it's really sad. We also deserve a chance to be heard out.
This street has been dubbed Tahrir Corner by some of the people here. An optimism perhaps that they too can bring down a government in the way their neighbors in Tahrir Square, Cairo did. But whereas the cameras there were rolling non-stop, here they're pretty absent. Paulus Leo, RT, Tel Aviv.
Well, blogger Danny Schechter says that the reality of life in Israel often goes unnoticed because the country only attracts coverage for its role in conflicts.
Many Americans think somehow the Israeli government is very popular. The leaders of Israel get a lot of attention in the American media. Israel is presented almost as a monolithic country when it's actually an extremely divided country. A massive protest of the kind we've seen in Israel about just the economic realities that people there are experiencing is something Americans have no understanding of because there's no context and no reporting. Israel is only reported in the context of its conflict with Iran or its conflict with Palestinians. The actual reality of life in Israel and what's happening to people there and how this right-wing government in Israel is handling the economy is something that we never really hear about whatsoever. It's a very unstable situation. The economy there is very unstable as well. Well, when you look at the Middle East, generally speaking, they talk only about the Arab countries. Only they have internal discord. You never hear about Israel's internal discord. And the fact that this uprising essentially is taking place in Israel, while at the same time there's one going on in Syria, there's one going on in Egypt, shows that the same pressures are, being experienced by Israeli people as well, which is inflation, economic pressure, food prices rising, all kinds of economic uncertainty.